You mentioned one thing that we target that how to associate and have a connection to Prabhupada is to follow his instruction. And if that's not there, there's no relationship.
Yes. And the other thing we started out with was gossip. That was the big topic. We were talking about gossip as well. I was thinking this morning, while I was walking here chanting japa early this morning, remembering that, I believe it was the first class we had, Bhagavatam class the other day, Devaki Mataji mentioned a disorder. Remember what it was, the disorder? A medical term, medical disorder?
Facebook disorder.
Facebook. We were talking about, she was talking about Facebook addictive disorder. And of course they call it FAD. It's Facebook addictive disorder. This is, of course, what they do now. Every month that goes by, there's another disorder. That become popular. We have, texting disorders and mall shopping disorders. So everything's a disorder because everyone's addicted. Everyone has an addiction. That's what material life means, we're addicted. So as I was walking and chanting, I was thinking, we have to change. Because all you can do is change your addictions in life. You know, you're not going to become unaddicted. I had a close relative, brother-in-law, he was addicted to alcohol. You know, he went to AA 30 years ago after hitting his bottom, and he rose above it. And actually, his whole life he's been free from it. But from there, he switched it to, started going to a health club, and he became very fanatic, like health fanatic and workout. He went from this, alcohol kind of a body to this very strong, muscular body. And every day he was doing it, hours a day. Because you can't stop being addicted. And in varying degrees of addiction. Some people, maybe you'll think it's more severe than others. But everyone has an addiction. Everyone has an attachment. We talk so much about becoming detached, but I was with Prabhupada all the time. He wasn't a detached person. He was very attached. But his attachment was to Krishna. So that's what we have to do. We have to change our attachment. We have to change our addiction. So then I was thinking of all the possibilities that we had. Instead of Facebook addictive disorder fad, we have to have a Krishna addiction disorder, which is a CAD. Or we have Radharani addiction disorder, which is RAD. But I thought the best. Well, that's an order. That's not materially it would be considered a disorder. I also agree with that. But for the sake of these nice little words, we're calling it a disorder. In the material world, this is a disorder. Anyone is, detached materially. That would also be considered a disorder, and that was cause for even not being able to perform military service. That's what Yadavar was saying. Because there's something wrong with you functionally that you don't operate within the material world. But the best one was attachment to Balarams. So that would be a BAD, dad. Then you would just be bad, because you were addicted to Balarams. So some people living in Vrindavan Temple, we developed a Balaram Krishna addiction. But no, these are not disorders. This is actually what's correct. But that doesn't make it in then you have a BAO, Balaram addictive order. So it sounds more interesting to have bad, because you're addicted to Balaram. Krishna and Balaram, they were also, as children, they were bad. They were always doing rascal things, beating up on demons. And I had a nice letter yesterday. Someone, I told you this, at Giyani, she asked a question. How is it you see a picture of Krishna and behind him there's a moon? If in the spiritual world we know that everything is effulgent, self-effulgent, so there's no need for sun and moon, these things aren't there. So how is it Krishna? Now we see Krishna and sometimes we see a moon behind him. How is it? Anyone know the answer Prabhupada gave?
It was in India.
Well, yeah, that's what he said. It was Gokul Vrindavan, not Goloka Vrindavan. He says the pictures you see of Krishna are in Vrindavan, within its earthly sphere. So you're correct, yeah. He was in India. He brought Vrindavan to India. That's the only reason we can stay in Vrindavan and Govardhan is because we realize we're not in India. If I would have thought for the last 16 months I was living in India, I would have certainly had a disorder. I would have had an India disorder of some type. But I always felt relief each day looking at Govardhan Hill, really realizing I was in Govardhan. And that's a GAD. Govardhan addictive disorder. To live in Govardhan, very, very sweet. So, anyway, this is what Prabhupada is training us. Everything he did was to teach to teach us how to become attached to Krishna. And we were talking about that yesterday. Always we're attached. By nature we have attachments. Everyone has attachments. We were discussing this morning, Prabhu Tapas was talking in the purport, how it said that ideally one should appear attached and be detached materially, although he has that appearance of attachment so that he performs his duties nicely. So that's the point. Everyone has to have that attachment. And with Prabhupada, he just had that one attachment, just serving Krishna and loving Krishna. That was his attachment. One day I went into Prabhupada's room. I always said how Prabhupada, he would speak to me and give me instructions, but I very rarely understood he was giving me instructions. Just thought he was talking. Just like here I'm talking to everyone, so no one has to take it personally that you're being given a certain instruction. But that's how he made me feel when I went into the room. That he was just thinking and talking philosophy. But it could have been to anyone. But because I was the person in the room, I was the beneficiary of what he was saying. So he always seemed to approach me in that way because he knew my resistance to hearing instructions, I think. And one day I went in his room, and it was in New Dwarka. Those of you who've seen pictures or happen to have been to LA, New Dwarka, probably had very pretty quarters there. It was white tile floors and blue walls, like your shirt, a little deeper blue, and saffron curtains. That's, from the beginning, that's what they, had heard. This was Prabhupada's favorite colors. He liked blue. Krishna was blue, so he liked blue. And then he liked saffron. So every place you would go, that's what I said, this was we would do this invitation thing. So his quarters always looked the same everywhere. He usually had blue walls, saffron curtains. There was because this is what Prabhupada liked, so you wanted to please him. This is the expression of love, is to do what the person you love wants, not what you want, and you give it to them. You understand what they want. So that's how you express love in service of what the person wants. So everywhere it was always like that, and generally had blue walls. Everyone was painting the walls blue. And usually they were painted just the day before Prabhupada arrived, or even the day he arrived, hopefully before, they were dry before he got in. But I would often, when you go to a temple, most of us when we go to a temple, like when I went to Philadelphia Temple, that was 1971, it was a very long time ago. When you walk in the temple door, there's certain things that hit you right away, and you never forget the smells at the temple. So it was always very strong, smell of incense. And from offering so many artis every day, the smell of incense. And sometimes you have the smell of spices, chaunces, which are being cooked in the other rooms. So that's always prevalent. But when I was Prabhupada's servant, there was another smell. It was a smell of paint. Everywhere we went, it smelled like paint, because there was always fresh paint on the walls, because when Prabhupada was coming, everything would get into order. Disorder, all these different addictive disorders, that's what you would do. You would turn them into orders, and they would literally just be cleaning up into the minute Prabhupada came and painting, sometimes hammering nails, and because Prabhupada was coming. And everyone, this was the result of Prabhupada's arrival anywhere. Everyone was engaged in service night and day to try to satisfy Prabhupada, to try to please Srila Prabhupada. And this, on the most simple, basic level, is what the spiritual master teaches you. How to serve, how to express your love for Krishna through the agency of the spiritual master. This is what we're learning to do. We're learning attachment. We're learning how to love in a transcendental way the spiritual master and express it through service all the time, through constant service. And by learning this, then you learn how we're supposed to love Krishna. Because he's showing us that. Because this is what he has. Prabhupada, love of Krishna. Prabhupada has love, perfect love for Krishna and for his spiritual master. He's showing us both. But you're seeing it in a living personality. This was, the very beauty of Srila Prabhupada. Everything. That's why I was saying his lectures, you listen to them. The other day we were speaking about this at the end of class in the question and answer period. And whether it was being expressed how listening to things on the internet is not the same as being personally there. Just like this, we have a kirtan here, and others are following it in other parts of the world. Some are saying that it's not possible that you can have that same feeling. So that's the question. How many agree with that? So what about Srila Prabhupada's lectures on tape? How many would say, if you listen to Prabhupada's lecture, you can't experience the same feeling you could if Prabhupada was sitting there and we were hearing it live? Would you say the same of that? It's a difficult question to answer. And again, see, now you know how I felt when Prabhupada asked questions. You don't want to say the wrong thing. But I'm not testing anyone because these questions we all have. Of course,
I have to defend myself because I don't have any other experience. So I have this only experience. So I don't.
And how do you feel when you hear Prabhupada's lectures?
I feel real fine.
Yes. I sat in front of Prabhupada right there, 2 feet away from his Vyasa-san. So you say 2.5 years, how many days is that? 700, almost 1,000 days. So I literally sat in front of Srila Prabhupada, heard almost 1,000 lectures. But I can tell you, when I listen to a lecture now, I hear so much more than I did when I sat in front of him.
Why?
30 years ago. Because I've had a lifetime of experiences to be able to have a little bit, in certain ways, I'm not saying every, but in certain ways, some maturity and some realization just by living your life. And when you're 19 years old and you're thrust into a situation. So I listen to Prabhupada now better than when I listened to him when, say, it was live. But of course we know also the words are live, otherwise, how can we read the books? Of course, question and answer periods, there are so many things there. But at the same time, my experience is I feel Srila Prabhupada's presence very much. What do you experience? I'm speaking here 4 days in a row now. Why are you coming? Do you feel Srila Prabhupada?
Yes.
I do. More than when I was with him sometimes. I have more appreciation now than I did when I was serving him personally. Even though I was touching his transcendental body, I appreciated it. And I knew he was a pure devotee, and I knew some benefit must be there. But my mind could be in a completely different place. So I was experiencing differently then than I was now. And, I feel his presence more talking about him as devotees than I did when I was with him at times. And the very first thing Srila Prabhupada did when he started speaking in 1965, as soon as he had a few followers, he made them buy a tape recorder to record his lectures. So if there isn't any potency in these recordings, then why record them? Why record all the bhajans he recorded in New Dwarka? And you see him playing. He would do bhajans in the early days. He would play the harmonium. And they would have a microphone, Krishna Srutakirti Prabhu. It was Golden Avatar. It was called Golden Avatar Productions. That's GAP. So he would bring in all the multi-microphones and channels, and Prabhupada would play harmonium, and he would chant. And then, because no one was expert in anything, playing harmonium just went This was, Prabhupada didn't like that. As we said, harmonium should be melodious to be used in the kirtan, otherwise don't use it. But I remember in the early days, we would have our kirtans, like in New Vrindavan, kirtanan, whatever instrument there was, kirtanan would give it to someone. So we had the, not the sitar, what's it called, tambura. So someone would just ding, 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 ding. And then the harmonium, no one knew how to play it. So he would just pull out, a few things, and he'd go, and this would be during the kirtan, and someone would, be banging on mridanga. So everything was engaged. So when Prabhupada recorded these bhajans, this was his desire to record these things so that we could hear him chanting. So there's potency is there. Transcendental, I'm not directing you. This transcendental potency is there in these recordings as well. So Prabhupada then would put the headset on, and this is what you see. You see Prabhupada with headphones on, and he has the mridanga. So now they're adding the track. So Prabhupada's playing the harmonium, and when you hear this, you can see Prabhupada. He's playing all the instruments. He's playing the harmonium, then you hear his mridanga add, and then later on, you can hear when other people started playing the mridanga, the difference between Prabhupada's playing mridanga and his disciples playing the mridanga. And sometimes he would chastise them for playing the way they played, because they played too complicated. Prabhupada liked a certain method in how it was done. So he would say, play like I showed you. Say like that. But from the beginning, he was giving us recordings. Potency is there. We have to hear. We have to have that eagerness. The Apostle was saying this morning, that greed. Right? We have to have that addictive behavior. We want to hear more than anything from Srila Prabhupada. We want to understand what it is he's giving us. And then we can have some appreciation. Certainly, if he could be before us, it could add an extra level of hearing and witnessing and paying attention. But we can give it that same, attitude if that's our desire. How did many people get Brahman initiation in our society? Do you know? They heard Gayatri Mantra through a cassette tape. There's people outside of this kind that said, none of you were Brahmins. But that wasn't what Prabhupada said. He trained up his disciples to chant on beads in his behalf, to have the initiation ceremony in his behalf. He was spiritual master. He did things that were just never done before. None of these things were done before, but Prabhupada was doing them in his emergency situation to expand the society, training people up, giving them Brahman initiation. I was lucky. I got to hear it from Prabhupada's mouth into my ear. But it doesn't mean I benefited more because I was sitting right next to him and I heard it that way. Certainly doesn't mean I'm more qualified as a Brahmin. I see many who heard it through a cassette recorder, much more Brahminical than I am. So it's all based on desire. I'll stop for a minute. Did you want to say something? You had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, it just occurred to me that when you were talking about like seeing Prabhupada, also Narayana Mahati said that always when she saw Prabhupada, it was kind of like not, I don't remember the exact words she used, but not like human. I mean, like a film. He was in his own effulgence in a way. So it was. She says that it wasn't kind of real to see him. And many.
He was transcendental.
Yeah.
I said sometimes when you saw Prabhupada, it was like he was in color and everything else was in black and white. I mean, sometimes you see that, they do that in films now and all. Well, Prabhupada seemed to be the only thing that was around. And you have to imagine the different situations. When Prabhupada came to a place where either no one had ever seen him before, or they hadn't seen him for 3 months or 6 months or 2 years, the feelings, the emotion that was there. And then you have to understand, when I was with him every day, as he was coming and going from those places, so what others were feeling, sometimes I wasn't feeling any of that, because I was with him every day. And unfortunately, in a conditioned state, that has another effect than when he was gone, and then suddenly he appears before you. So there was an ecstasy there, and when Prabhupada arrived, and there was a very painful ecstasy when Prabhupada went to the airport and left, that feeling of separation which was upon, which was, both of them would lead to tears. There were tears when Prabhupada arrived at an airport, and there was crying when Prabhupada left at the airport. And all of this ecstasy. But that's why also Krishna is doing this. He's leaving, sometimes he's appearing, because it increases that attachment. And that's what happens after the spiritual master leaves. Then you get to understand again what it means, how we can take this kind of addiction, this attachment, and what this attachment to the spiritual master, and then we understand this is what it means in Vaishnavism, to feel separation from Krishna when we have this. So all these things, it's learning. It's how the spiritual master, how a pure devotee is teaching us. Who's you?
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you now would be in Prabhu's presence with your level of consciousness now, then maybe it would be even more beneficial.
More.
Realize even more of his presence. Not that it's not potency in his books or in his tapes, but that it's because when you're really in the presence, you tend to be more focused. More, yeah.
Yeah, and again, we certainly can be. And like I say, that was my, we were talking about like me being with the servant, and how does one avoid offenses when you're with a pure devotee? Like you said, the most dangerous positions is as a devotee, because there's two. Both, actually one, but both the same. One is to be personal servant of the spiritual master, the other is to be the pujari, because familiarity breeds contempt. So they're dangerous services that one engages in. And that's why I say, being with them every day, I could see. There's in my book, I tell a story exactly about that. Most of you know this story. It happened I had been with Prabhupada for over a year, traveling to each temple. I never was at a temple when Prabhupada was coming to the temple. I've never had that experience. I was always in the airplane, 2 steps behind him as he was getting off the plane. That's the only relationship I knew, being with Prabhupada, was being behind him. I never had that interaction that I saw over and over again as he traveled around the world. I went with him 4 times around the world. So I would see in Australia, South America, all over the USA, Europe, India, Prabhupada getting out into the runway, into the little aisleway off the plane, and I knew, gradually knew what was going to happen. And Prabhupada, the plane would touch down in a place like Los Angeles, and in the 70s, airports were much more open and free, and everyone could go to the gate. So when Prabhupada was arriving in Los Angeles, there were hundreds of devotees there, and you could hear them from inside the plane, as they were all at this gate. chanting, with any number, half a dozen mridungas, a dozen kartals, and then there weren't lumpers. Fortunately, there wasn't a dozen lumpers in those days, or they would have been banging them like crazy too. But you could hear from the plane, so they're watching, sure they're watching the screens, it's going to land at such and such and all this. So just the enthusiasm that was building up with the devotees because of separation from Srila Prabhupada. So then on this particular day, for whatever reason it was, I was in a very bad state of consciousness. Bad in the sense that I just was feeling kind of depressed and sorry for myself. I'm sitting next to Srila Prabhupada and I'm feeling sorry for myself. And I just felt just very alone. And the plane lands and Prabhupada, as he would always do, he said, get the garlands from the last place, like New York, beautiful gardenias and red roses, and just, the whole plane would be fragrant with the smell of gardenia flowers. It was so amazing flower. And Prabhupada said, get the garlands, and I'd get them, and he'd point to the one he wanted, it was big gardenias, So he put it around him, and Prabhupada would adjust his bead bag. He prepared himself. He had that also. There was a rasa that was going on, and Prabhupada prepared himself to go out and for everyone to see him. And before he would put tilak on, make sure he had fresh tilak on. There was always a pattern that happened as the plane was about to land. As soon as they put on, fasten seatbelt, that means you're getting ready to land. So then Prabhupada would get up, say, okay, we can go to the bathroom. So that was his last opportunity to go to the bathroom. So then I would get up with him, because I followed him to the bathroom. Wherever he went, I was there, like a shadow. And Prabhupada got up, and then I got up, and if you ever fly, as soon as you do that, the first thing they do is start yelling at you, because they're in control, and the seatbelts, and Prabhupada would just ignore them like he didn't understand English, And of course, in that, this is 1972, 73, we were, in the West, people knew of us, but we're certainly unusual people, shaved heads and dhotis, and tilak, and Prabhupada was, they just looked at Prabhupada. It didn't matter who you were. Prabhupada was, everyone could see this person is different, not like everybody else. So Prabhupada would just stand up and start walking. And even if they would say something, he'd just walk. And I would become, being completely mundane consciousness, I would be always affected and feel a little bit embarrassed. And instead of just, I'd be affected. That was again my vata, I'd become nervous. And I just walk behind them, and if they, if they approach me, I just go, can't help you, sorry. I just go, Prabhupada. So then we walk to the bathroom, and Prabhupada would go in and go to the bathroom, and I just stand at the door. So the one time, the door's open in the airplane, so the door opened, and Prabhupada was fixing himself, and he looked at me and he laughed. He said, when you're an old man, you can do anything you want. So that was his psychology for dealing with all of it. He just, he could do anything he wanted, And he did that in a very transcendental way. He just was unaffected, which was one of the wonderful things in being with him, to see how he completely disregarded any material conventions and did what he wanted to do, which was always much higher level, and even materially, Prabhupada was much better. So then we go back and the plane to land, and then he put his garland on, he had his fresh tilak on, and he fixes court to everything, and then he'd tell us to take the other garlands. So we all came out looking very nice, like nice Vaishnavas. And Prabhupada was, it was funny because Prabhupada was, you could say on one level, Prabhupada was very impatient, but he was also very patient in every situation. So he was never a person that was rushed. Now when the plane lands, everyone tries to basically get out at the same time. I mean, you hate being in an airplane, and you just want to get out as soon as you can, so everybody's fighting and grabbing their bags and pushing. And Prabhupada never, he always left space. So as people were walking out, Prabhupada would, he had his personal space, so he would leave a few feet. But now as the people are walking out of the plane, the devotees know Prabhupada's closer, closer. And they're like, you can hear the kirtan now because the doors are open and the flyways. So you can hear the kirtan's getting more exciting because every person, when you're looking for someone, like when you arrive at the airport and every car that goes by, is that them picking me up? As they're, so now they're looking like that. This is Prabhupada, when you see a body and you think, that the cloth isn't the right color, so you know right away. So all this on I just know this is what's going on. And then, finally, Prabhupada, say he just appears at the gate, and people see different things, when they saw Prabhupada. Some people will tell you his feet never touched the ground. When Prabhupada walked, he was off of the ground. And everyone just hit the ground, do dandavats. Kirtan would continue to go on. Devotees are laughing, devotees are crying, and screaming Hari Bol, and the kirtan's louder and louder. And Prabhupada would just transcendentally just walk so, calmly, big smile. And everyone, somehow or other, everyone felt Prabhupada's presence, and they felt Prabhupada look directly at them. Everyone saw Prabhupada look right at them and give them an appreciative smile, transcendental glance. And they'd remember, if that was the only time they saw him, they'd never forget it. And for many, they'll tell you that just that 1 minute, that 1 second of connection, it just carried them through their whole lives, for the rest of their lives, just because Prabhupada, that was the moment's association. When we say moment association, we can say that in so many ways, what that means. It means so many more things than that. But that was a very special moment of association. And it was enough for them to go on, month after month, year after year, just following Prabhupada's instructions, because he looked at me. He looked at me and smiled, and you felt that relief. Prabhupada loves me. That's what you felt. You felt Prabhupada's love. His glance was always, it was a loving glance. No matter what it always was love, because he loved Krishna. He loved everyone serving Krishna. He saw everyone serving Krishna. So then Prabhupada walks out, and I'm behind him, carrying his bags, and everybody was in ecstasy, and I'm just like, I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear the holy name. I couldn't for some reason, I was not doing well. I was just in Maya. So that made it more pronounced, the fact that I could see everybody jumping up and down, dancing, crying, and I'm thinking, I don't feel anything. Here I am with them all the time. So then go back to the temple, and I have so many things to do in arrivals and departures, when you pack to go somewhere, your anxiety for days getting ready to go to the next place, make sure you have everything. So it was like that. So we get to the LA temple, and it's like 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning. I unpack all of Prabhupada's bags, and I'm just doing everything on, say, automatic pilot. I'm just not even thinking really so much, but just doing it because this is my service. This is what I do. And then I went into his room. He said, "So, you can give me a massage now?" Prabhupada would do like that. He wouldn't even say, "Time for massage, let's go." He would ask. Sometimes I would become so bewildered because he didn't have to ask for anything. that's why I'm being flown all over the place. You're spending thousands of dollars to fly a servant around because you serve him. But he would ring his bell, I'd go in the room and say, can you give him a massage now? And things like that, they would increase your attachment, because of the way he did things, how he dealt with you. He made you feel like that you were someone. Even on one level we feel very insignificant. But he made you feel like you were doing something. He appreciated what you were doing. So that day, yes, Prabhupada, so, we had our gumchas, we put on our gumchas, and I had the straw mat, traveled around the world. It was one of the little folding ones, folds into 3 things, you roll it up, and so that's what went around the world all the time, and put that down on the floor, and massaging Prabhupada's head, sandalwood oil, and I'm thinking, I'm just like, whoa, my mind got the best of me, and I'm just thinking, and I start massaging Prabhupada's back, and I actually want to say something to him, which I told you, I never asked questions, I never wanted to, put myself in that situation. But for some reason, I was so bewildered in such bad consciousness when massaging his back. And I said, Prabhupada, I said, so all these devotees, they come to the airport. And I said, when you arrive, I said, they're all in ecstasy. They're all crying, I said, laughing, jumping up and down, kirtan's going on. I said, they all have such love for you. And then I said it. I said, I don't feel anything. Now what I was looking for was Prabhupada to make me feel better. He was my father. He was with him all the time. And he didn't say one word. So then I really felt horrible. Imagine saying something like that to Prabhupada, to your spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. I said, I don't feel any love. I said, I don't feel anything. And that's how I felt. I saw everyone else feeling it. And this is why I came to Krishna consciousness. I wanted to feel God. I wanted to experience God. I wanted to love God. That's every reason I came. And after 2 years, I didn't feel anything. It had all gone away from the very beginning when I felt so much. So now here I am with the very source of love. And Prabhupada didn't say a word. So now I'm even more depressed. And I just keep massaging him. There's nothing else to do. And the whole time Prabhupada didn't say one word. The rest of the massage went on for over an hour. I'm changing positions. And Prabhupada just had his head down, his eyes closed, and I'm feeling worse every moment that he doesn't say anything. So then the massage was over. Massage his feet, and he would put his hand out and he'd put a teaspoon of mustard oil in his hand, and Prabhupada would put his fingers, oil his gates, his ears, and nostrils, all the holes he would oil. And then he walked off, and you could see on that white tile floor Prabhupada's footprints. You would see the oil, because he massaged his feet with oil. So there'd be little footprints going into the bathroom. So that was my busiest time of the day. From then, for the next hour, I was very, very busy. So I had to take apart the cooker, which wants his vegetables, which wants the dal, the chapatis, prepare his plates, put his clothes out, set everything up on his desk so he can put on the chandan, gopi chandan, put his tilak on, open the mirror. It was just every day it was the same, just like the pujari, on the altar, you do the same thing every day. So this is what I did. So then Prabhupada would come in from his bath, he would put on his cloth, fresh cloth, and he goes, sits down behind his desk. Everything's there, so he just grabs a bowl of chandan, takes a little water, he had a little lota, just like the size of a golf ball, pour water in there, like that. You could watch him, it was just beautiful watching Prabhupada. tilak. And he would put his tilak on, and then he would say his noon Gayatri mantra. So by the time he was finished Gayatri mantra, hopefully you're bringing his plate in. His rice, dal, 3 or 4 sabjis you've prepared, and 1 chapati with a little ghee on it. And I put the plate down, and Prabhupada would sit down on the floor on a cushion facing the wall, with a little table, like you have these tables here, this little choki, and he starts taking prasadam. So now I'm running back and forth into the servants' quarters where there was a 2-burner stove on the floor. That's where I prepared his lunch. Like it was in India, although it was in the USA. I roll another chapati, and puffs up, has to puff up. And just rub a little ghee on the top, and it's still puffed up. You put it on a plate, and you run into the room, slide it down in this tray. You offer obeisances, and the chapati's still puffed up. You run out of the room, back into the servants' quarters, make another chapati, and you just keep doing that. And then he goes, and no more chapatis. So sometimes 4, 5, 6 chapatis, and each one, pushes it down, breaks a piece off, makes a little sabji. Everything, watching Prabhupada, everything was glorious. Everything was wonderful to see how he did it. It was all perfect. And he ate alone all the time. Very rarely was anyone in the room. And if someone was in the room that he had been talking to, when I brought the plate in, he'd go, and he'd take a sweet or a piece of fruit, he'd hand it to who was ever there, and now you can go. Because he didn't conduct business while he took prasadam. That was the business, was taking prasadam. Very important part of our, just like everything, just like kirtan, just like chanting. No different. There's another form of kirtan, just taking prasadam. He said we should become addicted. This is another addiction, prasadam addiction. You have to become addicted to prasadam, so that you don't want anything else. So then, you do all of that. So now I'm busy. I'm distracted in my busyness, which was the best thing that could have happened to my mind, because I was so busy, I wasn't thinking anymore. So then I go in, Prabhupada's finished, he gets up, walks to the bathroom to wash, still hasn't said anything to me. And of course I kind of asked him a question. So then I have to transfer his plates, wash his plates, and go around, and go downstairs. And, the first dozen or so devotees you see, they're the lucky ones that get Mahaprasad, Prabhupada's remnants from his plate. Every day we do that, distribute Prabhupada's remnants. And then Prabhupada would take his rest. Usually about a half hour after lunch, 15 minutes, half hour. So now I'm in my room. And the bell rings. I told you about the bell yesterday, so that was always the bell. I hear the bell. So I get up, I run into the room, I offer obeisances. And I sat up, and Prabhupada sitting behind his desk. And he just looks at me. He said, do you like your service? I said, yes, Prabhupada, very much. I wasn't even thinking now what happened 2 hours before, all my trauma in my life that was going on. And I said, yes, very much, Prabhupada. He said, that's love. He says, service is love. He said, that's how you show your love, by service. He said, everyone can jump up and down. He said, but service is love. He said, so just keep doing your service. He said, and everything's all right. He said, is that okay? I said, yes, probably. And then that was it. I left the room, and then I was happy. I felt happy. But, these experiences, just like these festivals, my experience, you go to a festival, you come to a festival here for a week, you go to Ukraine. Everyone that attends, usually after a festival you have another disorder, you have the post-festival disorder, where you're like so high during the festival, feeling so much ecstasy, and all of a sudden it's back to everyday routines. So we all experience these things in different ways. But the real test, in Krishna consciousness is when you're feeling the worst, you just continue to do your service. Because these are all temporary things, all affected in our state of material nature, and so many factors. Sometimes our health is down, whatever it is. But the real test of our love is that we serve, we do our service, because it's out of love. And service isn't a bad word, it's a very good word. To serve Krishna, to serve the spiritual master, because of love. And we increase that love, we develop it more and more by remaining steady in our service. And Prabhupada, again, we talk about being with the spiritual master. Prabhupada said he was always with his spiritual master. We're talking about the gossip yesterday. When I first went to Mayapur, in Srila Prabhupada, I remember, going from Calcutta in the car, ambassador car, and of course, when you get on the Bhaktisiddhanta Road, and the first temple you go by is, what's it called? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Samadhi is there. So that's the birthplace, where Chaitanya's birthplace. Yeah, Yoga Pit. So, the first time I saw it, of course, when you go to Mayapur, very special place. Architecture is different, everything. It's very different than Vrindavan. But we went by there, and I remember being in the car, and Prabhupada said, told the driver, very often Gargamuni, he was like the driver at that time. Gargamuni, Ramananda's younger brother. So Prabhupada said, slow down. He didn't say stop. He didn't say go in, stop the car, we're going to get out. He just said slow down. And as we were passing, Prabhupada was like this. As he was passing the yoga pit, he was passing the spiritual master's samadhi. And then we went on to our land, ISKCON, Prabhupada's land, ISKCON property, which at that time was nothing on it except that little Goshala, thatched roof Goshala. So we drove and went into there. But that was the first time. So every time it was like that. Prabhupada didn't stop and go in to the temple.
It's Sri Chaitanya.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you.
So he never stopped and went into that temple. He would offer his obeisances from the car, and we would go on. So now we're in the Lotus building. So this is 1974. In 1975, Prabhupada's quarters are there. He's staying in his room in the quarters. And what happened one day, one of his godbrothers came, younger sannyasi godbrother, and he used to talk a lot about lots of different things. It was always in Bengali with Srila Prabhupada, so I never really understood what was going on. But one day he went in and he started saying to Prabhupada, your godbrothers, they're criticizing. They're always criticizing. He said, they're criticizing you because you don't stop and offer your respects. You don't see your spiritual master stop at the samadhi. So Prabhupada, he became furious and banged his hand on his desk. And he pointed to the picture of his Guru Maharaj on his desk. He said, I'm with him every moment. Not that he just had to make some official dandavat in front of his samadhi. He said, I imagine what Prabhupada was doing. He was with him every moment. He wasn't just talking. He wasn't just making a philosophical statement. He was saying a fact. He was with him all the time. Prabhupada felt his presence all the time. Not that he had to go visit him, because all the rest of the year he was doing something else. He was always with his spiritual master. So Prabhupada became very upset. So anyway, later on, Prabhupada called me into the room, and he said to me, he said, when my godbrother comes, he said, I don't want to see him. He said, all he does is gossip. He said, I have no time for gossip. He said, I'm not interested in gossip. He said, so when he comes, he said, I don't want to see him, you have to see. So Matt, he's saying this to me, 20-year-old kid, you know. And I'm going, yes, Prabhupada. He said, if he would speak about, Krishna conscious topics, if he would want to talk philosophy, talk about Chaitanya Charitamrita, pastimes of Krishna or Chaitanya, he said, I'd be very happy to speak with him. He said, but all he wants to do is saying what they're doing in this temple, what the godbrothers are doing in this temple, what their disciples are doing. He said, I'm not interested in these things. So he's telling me, he's explaining. He said, so I don't want to see him. So I said, yes, Prabhupada. So, I didn't know how I was going to execute this or what would happen next. So that was in the morning. So Prabhupada takes lunch, he takes rest. And while Prabhupada's resting, now if you know Mayapur, the Lotus Building, Prabhupada's quarters, you go up the stairs, and then you make a little left, and there's at the top of the stairs to the left is Prabhupada's room, his sitting room and his bedroom. So I used to just sit myself right at the top of the stairs, outside Prabhupada's quarters. So that very afternoon, Maharaj shows up, Prabhupada's godbrother. And of course, as soon as he sees me, he says, I want to see Swamiji. So now I'm like, he's Prabhupada's godbrother. So I said, fortunately, Prabhupada was resting. So now I had a reason, an excuse. I said, Prabhupada's resting now. So when he's resting, I said, can't disturb him. So then he became, he didn't care for that response. He became a little indignant, And he said, he told me whenever I want to see him, I can see him. And I tried my best, being a young brahmacharya, to try to fend them off. And I said, yeah, I understand. I said, but he's resting right now. And I said, while he's resting, I can't, I just can't do anything. So all this conversation's going on, the bedroom door opens, and Prabhupada's standing there. Now this is Mayapur, it was summertime, it was warm, and Prabhupada just has his dhoti on, no kurta, and he looks, probably like the moon, he just looked beautiful, brilliant, standing there, and his dhoti's all disheveled. Prabhupada would rest, take his nap in his dhoti, so it's all kind of wrinkly and disheveled, and Prabhupada's fixing it, and he's standing in the doorway, and he sees his godbrother, and he said, oh, Maharaj, he said, good to see you. He said, go sit down, I'll be right there. He tells him to go sit down, in the sitting room. And then Prabhupada walks to the end of the building where his bathroom was, to use the bathroom. So, of course, immediately, his godbrother kind of looks at me like, what do you know, kid, like you burn me up. And I'm like, oh, Krishna. So we both go in. For some reason, I don't even know why I went in the room, but I did. I was, you say, a glutton for punishment. Instead of running away, I went into the room with his godbrother, and we sit down on the floor. A minute later, 2 minutes, Prabhupada comes in the room, big smile. I don't know, from my obeisances, his godbrother gets up, they give a little formal hug, nothing special. And then Prabhupada sits down, and of course, before anyone can say anything, the godbrother starts saying, you're a disciple, I came here to see you, and he's telling me I can't see you, And Prabhupada looked at me. And he just looked. He said, I told you, whenever Maharaj comes, you let him in. And I said, yes, Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada went back, turned his attention in, and said, okay, you can go now. I don't know what he said to him afterwards, but I left, and I felt very happy, very that Prabhupada shared such a wonderful pastime with me, because he told me the exact opposite. So Prabhupada was saying, he said that in Mayapur too, he said, you can say anything you want, just don't put it in writing. So this was one of those situations where he could say what he wanted, but you don't write it down. Some things are just between certain individuals and all. But I felt privileged to carry a secret with Prabhupada, that he shared that with me. I felt very intimate and happy. But this was his feeling. Prabhupada didn't care for hearing nonsense. And then the festival started. So now devotees, Mayapur festival, 75, 500 devotees, all big leaders, everybody. And many of them stayed on that floor. On the other side, Prabhupada, there were 4 rooms on each side. And Prabhupada had 2, his servants, the entourage had 1, other one, maybe somebody was in. And on the other side were different devotees, GBCs, things like that. And Mayapur is a very special place. It seemed like everything carries, sound carried in Mayapur. So everything in that building, it seemed to carry through the whole building. It's one of the few things Prabhupada, there's 2 things Prabhupada said he really didn't like. He hated 2 things. One was mosquitoes, because they could interfere with his translating work at nighttime, mosquitoes, so he didn't like mosquitoes. Prabhupada really didn't like mosquitoes. And the other was slamming doors. And Mayapur was famous for slamming doors because the way the building was, when there were windows on each side, so breezes, there were nice breezes always at that time of year in Mayapur. So the breezes, if you didn't fix up the door, they'd slam. Oh, Prabhupada would become furious. But you could hear things. So anyway, Prabhupada's sitting in his room this one day, and on just 2 doors down, devotees are in there, and they're arriving. So like you have these festivals, come and see Madhaveris, what's going on here and what's going on there. You talk about topics since you haven't seen each other for 6 months or a year or whatever. When you get here, this is what we do. We catch up on news, what's new. And so this was going on. So Prabhupada rings his bell. And I go in the room. He said, go next door and tell them to be quiet. Because Prabhupada could hear everything they were saying. And he said, all they're doing is gossip. And what they were doing was gossip. Gossip means they were discussing basically God brothers. And who had left sannyas, who got married, who got divorced, who got remarried, who did this. This is what was going on. They were catching up. And Prabhupada was furious. And he said, it's all they do is gossip. He said, tell them to be quiet and just chant Hare Krishna. He said, I don't want to hear any of this gossip. He said, gossip destroys your Krishna consciousness. And this is the word he used. He said it destroys it. He didn't say it holds it back. He didn't say it blocks it for a period. It destroys it, kills it, destroys your Krishna consciousness. He said, so tell them. Now he's telling me again, I'm a young kid, I always considered myself, and I always have been, I was, these were senior devotees, they opened up centers, they did all these things. And he's saying, tell them, because I'm a servant. And I remember toning it down quite a bit when I went in, and I just said, Prabhupada's there, and he doesn't want to hear anything he's saying. And I said to be quiet. I didn't say all the other things that he said. I was so, I was kind of frightened by everyone. So I just said, Prabhupada asked him to be quiet, and he's trying to do something. And, but then I left. But it was interesting. I went to Mayapur with him 3 times, and every time I went there, the same thing happened. Every time Prabhupada called me from when he was in the shack, the little goshala in the front, same thing. And we were all packed in this goshal and had a little bamboo separation between Prabhupada's room and where we stayed. So devotees would come in and they were not very conscious, and they just start talking, not even thinking. Prabhupada's 5 feet away on the other side of this, like, half-inch thick bamboo screen. So Prabhupada would call me in, tell him to stop gossip. Prabhupada would always use this word gossip. It was a very specific word, gossip, and that's the word he used. He didn't use, Bengali, he didn't say prajapa, gramya kata. He said gossip. He said, tell because it destroys Krishna consciousness. My godbrother Upendra and I, we were very close. He was Prabhupada's servant many times, and for months during the end, Upendra had a way about him. He could be critical. Upendra could be critical of others. So sometimes he would say things about what others were doing and all. And Prabhupada said to him, what did he say? He said, gossip can destroy the society. It can destroy ISKCON. This is it. You can destroy the very society Prabhupada gave us by these things. And Prabhupada set the example. He said in a letter, he said, I don't have any time to criticize anyone. He said, I have so much work to do. He said, I don't have time to criticize. But this was his feelings about these things. So he tried to educate us. And he filled our plate, so many things to do. And he liked seeing Krishna Katha. He liked to sit with devotees and hear about how to spread Krishna consciousness. You hear, like he said, philosophy. You hear about preaching endeavors, what plans you have. He could talk long for hours about it. But he never liked to hear about anyone. This person did this person did that. Because he saw specifically that they would become discouraged. There was one very big example. He said, now you've embarrassed him. How can he come back to the temple? Because this was always Prabhupada's mentality. He just wanted people to come back. The fact that someone went away for one reason or another, that was the material world. That he said was going to happen. But how to bring them back was always Prabhupada's concern. Remember in Calcutta, a sannyasi disciple, he had a wife, and Prabhupada gave him sannyas. And now he was Prabhupada's secretary. At the time there was a secretary every month, different secretary, after Shana Sundar left. It was a difficult period, changing secretaries so much. But he was sannyasi, and he was feeling separation. And again, he was 10 years older than me, and I remember at the time I was a brahmachari, and he was speaking to me like a confidant. He was speaking and telling me how much difficult it was for him. He said, and it felt like, his heart had been yanked out from his body. I was shocked he was even speaking to me, but then I was hearing what he was saying. I was just listening. He just wanted somebody to hear how he wanted to share what he was going through. And I didn't know what to say, I didn't know what to do. And so he was struggling with that. So somehow or other, then Prabhupada rang his bell. I went in the room. The secretary came in the room. And again, I'm sitting in the room, just sitting there. And he starts talking to Prabhupada, and he starts telling Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, I'm having a very hard time. He said, I'm thinking all the time about my wife. He said, and it's attachment. He said, I don't know what to do. He said, I feel so attached. And Prabhupada sat and he listened. And then Prabhupada just shook his head. He said, yes. He said, it's very difficult. He said, this attachment, he said, it's a very difficult thing. He said, just last night, he said, I had a dream. My wife appeared in my dream, he said. He said, it's so difficult. He said, someone's together like that. So Prabhupada took it and he turned it around and started speaking about himself, saying, even he said, I had a dream about my wife last night after being apart for 20 years. Huh? And he just kind of, he didn't know what to say. Godbrother didn't know what to say after that, because Prabhupada kind of just, and being in front of Prabhupada always resolved our conflicts without him doing anything. This happened all the time. Sometimes, like in the U.S., people would travel from New York to Los Angeles to see Prabhupada with an urgent matter. And then you'd go to Bhagavatam class in the morning, you'd go on a morning walk, and you'd go into his room for darshan. And by the time you had the opportunity to say what was on your mind, what was troubling you, you thought, this is a hill of beans, this doesn't mean anything, it's not important. Because Prabhupada would just raise you up, and you would realize that all my problems are insignificant and are material, and the only solution is to dive in to Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada, he would pushing everyone into the pool, the pool of Krishna consciousness. So being around him, he would just lift you up. So your spirits would become lifted. And this is the importance, again, an association of devotees, association of advanced devotees. They can take you off of the bottom platform. Because if we're having any problems, that's what they are. The problems are with our mind, the problems are with our attachments, so many difficulties, fights, all these things. But they have no place in Krishna consciousness. And this is what Prabhupada would show us all the time. And do your service. You say, just do your service, everything will be all right. You read his letters, chant your rounds, follow the principles, attend the classes, and do your service. And there's no other solution. All these other solutions are just temporary material solutions. Okay, we could stop here today. Are there any questions, comments, observations?
So do you cook for Prabhupada every day?
Yes, in the West. In India there were always his female disciples, again, Elder Palika, Jamuna, Malati. They were all in India at that time, so when we would go to India, they would do the cooking, which was a great relief, because cooking in India in the 70s was not very easy. Cooking in the West was much simpler, get everything you needed to do everything. The cooking in India was difficult, but in traveling in the West everywhere we went, I cooked for him. Yes.
You mentioned at the beginning about changing our attachments. You said attachment to Krishna, attachment to Radha, and we should become like absorbed. But did Srila Prabhupada said something about like the relationship to Radha, and because first you should be attached to Gaurita, or can you mention something about first deserve and desire?
We understand, philosophy, we understand everything, of course, is going through the cyclic succession, through the spiritual master, his spiritual master, and through the Goswamis, and the Lord Chaitanya. He approached Lord Chaitanya. Like he said in Krishna Balaram temple, he said, we've established this temple of Krishna Balaram, he says in a letter, so that the people who come, they can understand Lord Chaitanya. So what does that mean? You're going to the Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan. Of course, as soon as you go in, and you come in and you file through the doors, first deities you see are Gaurnitai. Now, in West Bengal, that part, everybody knows Lord Chaitanya. But in other parts of India, Lord Chaitanya is not very well known. But then he's Krishna Balaram, and everywhere they can identify with Krishna Balaram. And then, of course, go to the next altar, Radha Shama Sundar, and many times you can't even get anywhere near the altar. It's so crowded. Everyone wants to see Radha Krishna. To see Radha Krishna. But then when they're done, the devotees are there to explain how Lord Chaitanya, it's through Lord Chaitanya, everything is coming. Through the Sankirtan movement, this Lord Chaitanya has opened up the floodgates of love of Krishna. So it's up to us to understand the philosophy of how we approach Krishna. And we never approach Krishna directly. As a servant, many times, and even in these lectures, people will say, when you cooked for Prabhupada, did you offer it? Did you offer it? So, what did I do? Did I offer it?
Yes. Yes, you did.
How did I offer it?
It's a spiritual master.
But I mean, how? What did I do? Get and say that like that Pujari does. Put the plate on an altar.
Was it your service and offering in itself?
Well, that was it. That's all I did. And I would say, yes, I'd offer it to Prabhupada. I would prepare his plate, go in the room, put it down on the table, and Prabhupada would come and eat. That was it. There were no prayers to say. That was, like you said, that was the prayer. That was the offering. I was cooking for Prabhupada, who was a living, walking, pure personality. Otherwise, what do we do at home? You prepare something, you have a little picture of your spiritual master there in a corner in the kitchen on a little shelf, and you offer it to him. But there were no prayers because Prabhupada was there. Again, this is how I started out speaking with, this is what it's all about, is learning how to approach Krishna through the spiritual master, learning how to develop love. So when he's here personally, look at the opportunity of how you can serve. And I never had, from the first day, like I said, no one ever told me what to do as Prabhupada's servant. I never knew what to do. But I never thought that, before I brought it to him, that I had to offer it. Because who can we offer to? We only offer to our spiritual master. There's no one else. We don't offer Krishna. We offer through the disciplic succession. So we offer it to Prabhupada. So I was offering it to Prabhupada. But the wonderful thing was, Prabhupada he's a deity. He was a walking, talking, chastising, joke-telling deity who is alive. Just like we can do with the deity, he can talk to you if you're self-realized. Prabhupada could talk to you, you had no realization because he was right there. So he did every day. And he could tell you, this dal tastes like mud. Do any of the people in the kitchen, did Lord Chaitanya ever say that to you? This dal tastes like mud today. But I had that facility. Prabhupada would say, bring some salt. You forgot salt. This was a wonderful opportunity to learn how to do service. It was Guru Das on the trains back in 1970 in India. He traveled by train one place to the next. You still do much of the time. But India, one thing they have together more than any country in the world is how to feed you while you're traveling by train. When you stop, and it's still that way, just it can be a 30-second stop and everything happens. These tiffins come in and the chai wala comes in and this goes out, and they know how to serve food. They really know how to prepare it, serve it, and get it done by the millions every day. So Prabhupada was traveling, this again, 1970, when they stopped at one stop, and Prabhupada said, get some kachuris. So Guru Das went out and got kachuris, and he brought them in, and he sat down, and then he, had a little table, cleaned the table, and then they're in the train in India. And then Guru Das got down on his knees, hands and knees, And Prabhupada said, what are you doing? He said, I'm offering it. He said, I'm right here. So this was the position. I'm right here, Prabhupada saying. He was saying, he's still right here, but now we have to do it through a certain formula. But Prabhupada was right there. You could just offer. We offered him the garlands, we offered our obeisances. Give him a fruit on the altar, you just handed it to him. It was an offering to Prabhupada. One day he walked into the kitchen in Los Angeles, California. They have, that area, California, Southern California, is like the fruit belt, beautiful strawberries and everything, oranges. Anyway, there was a big bowl of strawberries, nice big red strawberries in a colander. So mostly in the kitchen, usually the ladies were in the kitchen cooking. And Prabhupada walked in, sometimes he would do inspections. You like to see the cleanliness. We need Dwarkadish were there, Dwarka, so everything had to be clean all the time. No collection of pots, dirty pots, anything in the sink. Everything had to be done right away. But he saw the strawberries and he said, what's that? And Mataji said, oh, there's strawberries, Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, oh, and he grabbed them, And he's like, and she said, it's boga, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, oh. Threw it in his mouth. Because we don't understand. Because all we're doing was through Prabhupada. Sometimes he would, in his special way, try to give you an idea. One devotee lady who cooked for Prabhupada in Mayapur, she tells a funny story. Prabhupada was there in 76. At that time they were only getting so much milk. So they were offering milk to the Radha Madhava, to the deities, and of course Prabhupada was staying there. So Prabhupada that day, he wasn't feeling well, but that day he said, I want some milk, give me milk. So she went down to the kitchen, and she said, I need milk for Prabhupada. The girl was in the kitchen, the cook, Pujari, and she says, we only have this much, it's only enough for the deities. And, this devotee, she said, I need it for Prabhupada. It was for Prabhupada. So it became a tussle. So the Pujari in the kitchen, somehow or other, she pushed her out of the room, out of the kitchen, and slammed the door, because she was determined that she had to offer to the deities this milk. So anyway, she's on the other side, she's just beating on the door, trying to get into the door. Finally, she opened the door, and grabbed it, threw it at her, heated up the milk, and she brought it to Prabhupada. What else do we have except to give to Prabhupada? What else can we do? This was our understanding. Everything was for Srila Prabhupada. What is the use? How can you offer it to anyone? Prabhupada wanted it, you gave it to him. Anyway, by the time she got upstairs, she said, were you all right? She said, yeah, I just had a little incident. But this was our thing. We just wanted to please Srila Prabhupada. We just had to please Srila Prabhupada. Okay. One more, any other question? About anything?
Some days back, HG Prabhu told something that you had with Prabhupada. Prabhupada told you that all he longed for was to eat sandesh and kachori with Krishna.
We'll say that for another. It's a little longer story. It deserves some time.
So.
But I said when I started out, how Prabhupada would say things to me. So the one day I walked into the room in Los Angeles, and I was facing, because many times I would just come up the side and sit like next to him on the floor. He'd be on his asana behind the desk. So I was just, because he called me, he rang the bell, so I was sitting down, and he just looked at me. And he said, we're not so advanced that we think, I want to come back life after life and do service. he said we should want to go back home, back to Godhead. He said this is our desire, this is how we should think. He said we're not that advanced. And of course I just said yes, Prabhupada. And then I was, when I thought later, and I realized he was definitely talking to me, because Prabhupada would say we. We meant different things. Sometimes he would say we and it meant him, like he would say we have come to your country. He meant I have come to your country. But then in this instance, when he said we are not so advanced, he meant you're not so advanced. We, or he didn't mean him, he meant. So you had to understand Prabhupada when he said things, what it meant. So I always carry that very close to me and think I just have to try to endeavor. I'm certainly not that advanced that I think in terms of I just want to come back. I say that sometimes, I just want to serve Srila Prabhupada. But I want to serve him up in the spirit, so I want to come back to this nasty place, a nasty place. Well, next we have starting.
I just have a question.
Go on.
In the beginning of your everything, you told that Prabhupada, you understand Prabhupada now better than before, when everything was happening real. You understand him better now, or his talkings and everything. But how did you feel when you were no longer his peer, a personal assistant? You were no longer. Well, how did you feel after you didn't serve him anymore so personally? Yeah. What was your realization that you were serving him all the time, and all of a sudden it was stopped? How did you feel?
Well, he arranged within our society so much service in so many ways. So even when I remained in Hawaii, and at that time I became manager of Govinda's restaurant. So there was always full-time engagement. It was very different than personal service, but we very quickly adapt. And when we were busy in Krishna consciousness, you always feel satisfaction. And like when you eat, you feel full. Or you engage. And at that time, there was never any monetary exchanges for anything we did. No one ever received a salary. So we were engaged to always it was just service. There was no question that it was mixed with anything else. We were just doing service. And I became temple president for some time in Hawaii. And so he saw that I kept engaged. And it was through him that I had these engagements. He actually arranged that I was temple president. He arranged that I was managing Govinda's restaurant. So he was giving me the service. So there was contentment there and feeling, connected to Prabhupada still. And that doesn't change as long as we engage in service. And as soon as we stop and we feel that lack of inspiration, lack of some happiness, and you engage in service and you feel content. At least that's how I am. I'm happy when I'm doing some service, when I feel like I'm doing something useful, then I feel happy. But in a few minutes, in that room in the corner, Yellow is going to be showing, he's been preparing for days, special photos from videos, most everything none of us have seen before. He's been preparing text under, explanations, and I'm sure everyone's going to have a wonderful time and continue to see how Prabhupada is doing different things at different times. There's some in there that I've seen already. I was looking, we're staying together. There's shots with Jamuna in there, and very young girl, and a lot of nice photographs. So hopefully everyone will have time to attend that. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.